What is up, book nerds? I am Rachel Bateman, and NaNoWriMo starts in 2 days. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling wildly unprepared for NaNoWriMo this year. That's probably because I am a hardcore plotter and I decided to switch my project really late in the game, so my book isn't as thoroughly plotted out as I normally like to have it before I start writing. But I'm still really excited to dive in, and I'm feeling really good about this project, so hopefully that means it'll still go well for me, even though I'm not as prepared as I want to be. I'm also not as prepared in my normal life. I had big plans of making freezer meals for November, so dinners would be nice and easy, and it is October 30th, and we do not have a single meal in the freezer, so we see how that went. But that's okay. I've never done freezer meals for November before, and we don't starve, so we'll be just fine. I wanted to take today's video to real quick give you some last minute tips to have a successful NaNoWriMo. So if you're feeling stuck next month, hopefully you could think back on these and work through what you're stuck on and keep moving on. Because I really do want you to have a fun and successful NaNoWriMo and have a good chunk of a first draft by the end of it. So I have 8 tips to help you get through next month. Tip number 1 is anytime you're stuck, step back from the actual writing and just take a minute to jot down the next several things you want to happen. Just a couple words, just shorthand to give you a roadmap to follow. Even if you're not a plotter, this really tends to help when you get stuck. Just take a minute, pen and paper, and jot it down as fast as you can. Here's what I want to see. And when you have that little roadmap to follow, it'll help you as you're writing to get to where you need to go. Even though I am a hardcore plotter, I often find I get to the point where I'm like, I don't really know what's happening next. Like, I see what's on my outline and where I need to go, but I really need to step back and figure out the details of what happens to get from this point to this point. And just taking 5 minutes to just free write and jot down a couple words here and there, notes of what needs to happen, really opens up the path to being able to write those things. Tip number 2 is one that I basically have for any first draft tips, but is especially important when you're trying to write a fast first draft, and that is to not go back and edit as you're writing. Editing as you go may work for you normally, but when you're trying to bust out 50 or more thousand words in a month, you really need to be having forward motion the whole time. Going back and editing really is just going to slow down the progress. Now, if that's what works best for you, that's great, but maybe a fast drafting challenge isn't the right thing for you to be doing. If you want to have the rush of that fast draft and writing 50,000 or more words in a month, don't edit as you go, just keep moving forward. If you're writing along and you get a flash in the back of your head of, oh, I need to change this thing that happened in order to make it work, just make a note and keep going, and you could change that when you're done. Tip number 3, and this is maybe the most important one, so maybe I should have made it number 1 or number 8, so it was at the beginning or the end, but I didn't. Tip number 3 is to turn off the internet. When you're trying to write quickly, you need to stay focused, and having the distraction machine of the internet blaring at you all the time is not going to help. I don't mean have Word open here and just keep your Facebook in the background so you're not seeing it when you write. Shut it down. Take away that distraction. I showed you in previous videos my Alpha Smart that I do my first drafts on. A big part of that is that there is no internet, there is no distraction on there. Being able to focus fully on what you're doing really helps. I'm not saying you can't look at your social media all month or get online all month. I'm saying when you are actively writing, turn it off. And that also doesn't mean do a 15-minute word sprint and then hop over to Instagram for a few minutes and then go back. When your writing session is done, then turn the internet back on, because we all know that 3 minutes on Instagram turns into 30 minutes on Instagram, turns into an hour on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you're looking. I do understand the irony of talking to you in a YouTube video and telling you to turn off the internet, but I'm doing it anyway. Tip number 4 is to use brackets. Brackets are your best friend when you are doing a fast draft. What this means is if you're writing along and you get to a spot and you realize, oh shoot, I don't know if this is actually right, it does not matter. Stick it in a bracket, make a note to yourself, and move on. When you get that thought of, oh, I need to fix this thing I wrote in chapter 2 in order to make chapter 6 work, rather than going back to chapter 2, put a bracket and say, address this in chapter 2, end bracket, and move on. When you're writing really quickly and you suddenly can't remember a character's name, it doesn't really matter. Stick it in a bracket so you can address it later. I have found that no matter how much I research ahead of writing a project, I will get to a point where I realize that I don't actually know something, my research hasn't turned up what I'm trying to do right now, and stopping to research it then will just send me down a rabbit trail of taking forever and reading everything. So instead, I put a bracket, research this later, and move on. Use brackets liberally. I do know some authors who also will use brackets like, okay, we have this great fight scene coming up, but I don't really know how it's going to go, so you lead up to it and then you bracket fight scene here and move on. I personally can't bracket a whole scene like that, but if you can, more power to you. But small things, notes to myself, questions that I need to look up, things that I'm not sure if they're right. I can't think of the right word for what I'm trying to say, but I just really need to keep my flow going. All of that goes in brackets, and when I do my read through after writing my draft, the very first thing I do is look at brackets. I go through and address as many of them as I can before I read the full book. I may have shared this before, but I can't remember, so I'm going to share it now. In Someone Else's Summer, this is one of my actual brackets. But for serious, is her dad's name freaking Richard or not? Her dad's name was not Richard, it was Roger, but someone had just called him Richard, and then I bracketed that because I honestly could not remember what Mr. Holloway's first name was. And I didn't need to take the time to scroll back through however many pages of writing it would take to have his first name. Brackets are for you, they're notes to you, no one else is going to read them, so write whatever you need to in them in order to just keep moving forward with telling your story. Tip number 5 is that it's okay, even when you're trying to write a lot of words in a month, to not write every single day. That's okay. Now the NaNoWriMo breakdown is 1,667 words per day in order to get your 50,000 in a month. And if you're trying to just do that every day, then you will need to write each day to do it. But what you really need to do is figure out what works best for you. This year, I am going to write every day just because at the beginning of 2020, I set a write every day for the year challenge to see if working that way worked different from my normal style. So I will write every day in November this year, but typically I tend to write a lot on Saturdays, and then Tuesday and Thursday nights I write a lot as well. And if I need to fill in gaps elsewhere, I will, but typically I'm a 3-day-a-week writer during NaNoWriMo, and I get it done. You don't have to write every single day if that's not what works for you. Find what works best for you to get your word count done, and stick with that. Don't try to force yourself to do it every day if that's not something that's feasible. Tip number 6 is to do word sprints. Word sprints are really great for forcing yourself to turn off the inner editor and just get words on the page. What I do for word sprints, I tend to do really long ones, like 45 minutes, but when I'm with my writing group, we do like 15 or maybe 20-minute word sprints. Sometimes they'll do long ones with me, but set a timer for however long works for you. Maybe you want to do a Pomodoro technique and do 25 minutes at a time. Whatever works for you. Set the timer and do nothing but write as fast as you can during that time. Don't think too hard. Don't stress about word choice. Don't worry about typos, which brings me to like tip 6.5. If you need to change your font to white so you can't actually see what's on the page, so you could just write and not stress about typos, go ahead and do that. I know a lot of writers that do that. I don't, but if it works for you, do it. Back to word sprints. They are wildly effective at just helping you break through and get words out. So especially if you're feeling like you're going really, really slow or getting stuck, do a word sprint. Along with the word sprints, there are also word crawls. You can find a lot of them in the NaNoWriMo forums, and they're like fun little games. Like, if you roll a 6 on the dice, you need to write this much in order to advance in this quest. People have put so much time into making these epic word crawls that tell this story, and you go on this adventure as you write, and they can really help you boost along as well. They are really fun to do in a group. My favorite word crawl, and one that I use anytime I'm feeling stuck or unmotivated, is the word crawl for the Motivationally Challenged. I actually have it on a laminated sheet so I could like write my numbers and then erase it for the next time. This was originally posted in the NaNoWriMo forums by a user named Ghosteria many, many years ago, and it is great for getting a lot of words written when you don't feel like you're getting a lot of words written. So what it does is it breaks down a whole bunch of mini word count goals you're trying to go for, and like super mini, 10 words, 15 words, 25 words. The biggest one on here is 200 words. But by the end of the whole thing, if you do all of the little mini word counts, you have 3,065 words by the end. I find the word crawl for the motivationally challenged to be super, super helpful when I'm feeling blah or like I just don't want to do it, because I could write 10 words in my sleep. 200 words is pretty easy to do. So you just do them one at a time, and eventually you've written 2,000 or 3,000 words in a day. It is super, super helpful. I've actually made this little worksheet for it. I send this out with my Work Your Book plotting book, so everyone that buys that has a laminated cover. But I am going to post a link down below for where I have this worksheet that you could print for free if you are interested in using that. Tip number 7 for a successful NaNoWriMo is to take care of yourself. Make sure you are eating well, you're getting enough water. Take time to spend with your family and friends if you're able to during this pandemic. Take time for a nice bath if you enjoy baths. Watch one of your favorite movies. It's easy to feel so stressed about trying to get your word count in that you just focus wholly on this book and that's all you're doing and you burn out. Take time. You can write 50,000 words in a month even if you watch a movie on a Friday night. And you can write 50,000 words in a month even if you decide you need to take an entire day or even 2 off just to spend with your family and reconnect. Don't forget to take care of your physical, emotional, and mental needs. Your word count is not as important as your health and your relationships. So I definitely want you to get out there and try your best and really, really work to achieve the goals that you've set for yourself for NaNoWriMo. But take care of yourself. Make sure that you, your family, and your relationships are your number 1 priority, and NaNoWriMo comes after that. Finally, tip number 8 for successful NaNoWriMo is to have fun with it. Yes, it can get stressful. Yes, it can be hard, but have fun with it. There is no point in doing this if you can't have fun with it. That doesn't mean that every single day that you sit down to write is going to be a super fun day, and it doesn't mean it won't get hard. It doesn't mean you won't want to quit at some point, but overall, have fun telling your story and writing your book. Enjoy the process, and it'll make it so much easier. All right, those are my 8 last-minute tips for a successful NaNoWriMo. Do you have any tips you would like to add? Put them down in the comments so others can see your tips to help them get through NaNoWriMo next month. If you are writing for NaNoWriMo, I wish you the best of luck. I think it's going to be great fun and probably a bit of the escape that a lot of us need right now, honestly. Thank you so much for watching this video. If it was helpful or you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you have not already. I am Rachel Bateman and I will be back here next week.